We've been talking about major figures, and that just begins to touch the surface. And let's just have a look briefly, remind ourselves of what's going on in some grassroots organizations in Java. And here it's appropriate, I think, to pay tribute to the CRCS, to the work of Pak Abdullah and others in guiding the CRCS, which has produced in its S2 scriptures one of the most important collections of local case studies of religious life in this country that anyone has ever done. They really are a remarkable contribution, and I have learned a great deal from them. So we're going to talk about some of those in a minute. But first of all, let us go up the slopes of Mount Lawu to Desa Belumbang. Belumbang, you can see they grow bawang putih. It's all onions up there. But the important thing about Belumbang is it also has an old punden, an old religious site. And every year there are ceremonies there which involve wayang performances and so on to venerate the spirit there. Now the local story is very interesting because there was a young fellow there who was not doing very well in life, and he lost a lot of his father's money, he couldn't get a job and so on. And he began to read the Quran himself. He didn't know any Arabic. He'd never encountered a mubalik. He had no kiai or ustad guiding him. And he began to feel that he would find more meaning in life by embracing what he called Islam kafah, so the complete religion. But as I said, with none of the kind of intellectual background or research into these things. So he and a few of his friends built a new mosque in the village. But with this more, following their understanding of Islam, they began to split the village. The older generation very unhappy about what was seen as this doctrinaire view of these young people. Now, the next time the ritual came around, this would be 2005, I think, everybody had to put money in, of course, to pay for the ritual at the punden. But this group refused. And in the Desa next door, there was also a similar group, and they also refused to contribute. Well, then the village elders, of course, imposed a fine upon them and said, well, you have to pay the fine. At this stage, things began to get a bit tense, and so the police came up from Karananya, and the police came along and said to the young people, well, you have to pay this fine. We're on the side of the elders here in the community. But then, behind the police came 200 motorbikes from the Majlis Mujahideen. Now, when those 200 motorbikes arrived at Belumbang, the police suddenly discovered they had other urgent business. They really had to go and do something else. So they got out as fast as they could, and the whole thing was taken down to court at Karananya. Now, the importance about the story is that since that time, this young group has just grew up quite spontaneously, not inspired by anybody, just grew up spontaneously from local roots. Now, has links with MME, and they just need to go down the hill a bit to the Ish Karima Mosque, which has a reputation of being quite fundamentalist, and have embraced a very Abu Bakr Bashir style of Islam. So the community has been divided. And you can't say that anyone from the outside did it. It just grew up from within. We see this kind of dynamism in lots of places. There's another very interesting group called, found near Prambanan here, called Islam Tawhid. That's a thesis by Ahmad Salahuddin at CRCS. Very interesting group. You have to be dibayat, to take oath to move through the various levels of understanding of Islam Tawhid. There are 72 levels. And of course, they observe the 5 pillars, but one of the interesting things about Islam Tawhid is when you get to the top level of learning, you realize that you should actually not pray. Prayer is not supposed to happen because praying is a kind of giving orders to God. So this is remarkable. And they're saying basically one of the 5 pillars should not be carried out because of this. It's a version of Islam in which women play quite an important role. Women and men stand in the same line when they pray. But its opponents say they really practice black arts. They use hypnotism. Again, the community has been split. And the other people accuse them as being, they say, Wong Jawa ko orang Janani. So the Javanese have kind of refused to Javanize. It's interesting that the teachings, for example, they compare the relationship between humankind and God with the relationship between the wayang and the dalang. But mereka dilarang, tidak boleh nonton wayang. So they use Javanese ideas, but reject Javanese culture. We see a similar group actually in Kediri. They're called Jama Zikru Shahadatain. And their enemies again say they use black magic. And their dhikr consists of repeating the Shahada 1,000 times. But they were actually shut down by the police in Kediri when the local community became split. They accused them of being practitioners of black arts and magic. There's a very interesting example, again, of the CRCS thesis by Budi Ashari in this ritual Tutuglayan off the north coast, where again, various interpretations from these different versions of religious identity are brought together by an annual ritual to placate a spirit in the water. So lots of strange things going on. And so when people begin to generalize about Islam in Indonesia, or Islam in Java, or Islam in Jogja, I say I can't even